Title says it all. You clicked on it, I'm filming it, so let's just get right to it. Is Moon Knight racist? Though, while doing my research for this, I did come across some other interesting things, so let's take a look at some crazy comics that really couldn't be printed today. When it comes to asking if Moon Knight is racist, there's one very obvious hood in the room, and it's his costume. Let's just let Luke Cage point it out. Guys in white hoods aren't exactly welcome in Harlem. That wasn't actually something that clued into me until I read that issue of Marvel Knights where it happened. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that does kind of make sense. Where I started wondering if Moon Knight might be racist was Marvel Fanfare number 39. It was written by Michael Carlin and Bill Reinhold did the art. The title of it is just, I guess it's a swear word, all the symbols for a swear, and because that keeps coming up. People keep saying that over and over and over in the comic in fun and creative ways. Marvel Fanfare was just kind of a fun book with filler. There was no real ongoing story or anything. It was just different heroes and different stories. But this one begins with a guy who may or may not be Saudi Arabian, dressing himself up as a Saudi and heading to the UN with a bomb. And of course he takes a cab to get there, so that's where Jake Lockley comes in. Jake Lockley takes him in the cab, and he notices the lights are bothering him in Times Square, bothering the gentleman with the bomb. He doesn't know he has a bomb, obviously. So he drops him off, and he's like, oh, traffic is thick, and he says the swear word, and he goes and drops the guy off, and doesn't get much of a tip. In fact, he says, thanks for the 2-bit tip, Khashoggi. Now, I don't know if Khashoggi is a racial slur, and I sincerely apologize if it is, because I've used it a couple of times now. The only thing I could find was Jamal Khashoggi, which is spelt completely different. He was a journalist, and at the time this came out in 1988, he would have been working for the Saudi Gazette. I have no idea if he was famous or his name would have got around back then. I was a little kid, so I don't know if Khashoggi is a racial slur or not. Seems the way he used it kind of maybe been a little bit. He's like, hey, thanks for the tip, Khashoggi. Once again, I apologize if I am saying something I shouldn't be. I don't know. Anyway, after Jake drops him off at the UN, he goes and he's sitting in Gina's diner where he's getting a burger, and then there's a report on the news that there's a bomber at the UN, so he's like, I have to go, and he leaves a bad tip, and Gina says the swear word, and he goes and he tries to get a hold of Frenchie, and Frenchie's in the shower, so Mark says the swear word, or Jake, or whoever it is at this time. So that's how the swear word keeps coming up like that. I'm not going to give every example because I'm kind of tired of it already. Anyway, he goes to the UN, and this gentleman has taken off his Saudi clothes, and he doesn't look Saudi. He looks like a white guy. I don't know if he is. They don't really specify, but at the very beginning, when they show his apartment and preparing the bomb and everything, there is a makeup kit, so I believe maybe he was making himself look more Saudi, although he does represent the Mid-Eastern Libertarian Army. What that means, I don't know. That is all beside the point, I guess, because Moon Knight goes in and he simply flicks the lights on and off and gives this man an epileptic seizure because of what he saw in his cab and saves the day. Hooray. Nothing too overtly racist. Not bad, not good. And at the end of the comic, Jake Lockley's in his cab and he's driving along, and then he sees another gentleman in full Saudi Arabian garb, and he's hailing down a taxi, and he's like, oh no, not today. Jake Lockley is off duty, and does not pick the gentleman up, and then the gentleman says the swear word, and that's how it ends. Racism is discriminating against someone because of their race or ethnic group. So actually, yes, by Jake Lockley not picking someone up simply because he had a bad experience with one of them, that is racism. Moon Knight is racist in this particular comic written by Mike Carlin. While we can say Moon Knight acted racistly, we cannot definitively say Moon Knight is racist until we get a bigger picture here. So let's read some more Moon Knight comics. As you may or may not know, I am reading every single appearance of Moon Knight. The next big strike against Moon Knight came in West Coast Avengers number 40. They just came off of the annual, and Black Goliath, which is racist in its own right. Goliath, Bill Foster, was with them. It was a whole thing. Some of the West Coast Avengers had split because they had a more lenient thoughts towards killing, and Hawkeye's Avengers were like, oh, we don't kill. So they kind of split in two. Goliath was with the more aggressive team, and then he was like, well, I guess I should be taking off, and Moon Knight turns and says, good riddance, that man is not of our kind. To which the readers were like, what? And even Tigra says, Mark, knock off that racist crap. When Moon Knight does clarify, he's like, no, that has nothing to do with the race. I just mean he's soft. We are hard. We are killers. He is soft. He's a good boy hero. So he's not like us in that regard. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess that's okay. And also, I guess it's worth pointing out that this isn't even Marc Spector right now. This is Khonshu fully inhabiting Moon Knight's body. But then the fact that Tigra says, knock off the racist crap. Tigra and Marc Spector are in a relationship at this point in time. So the fact that she says, knock off the racist crap, like if it's just the first offense, she'd be like, holy crap, are you a racist? She says, hey, knock off the racist stuff, which leads me to assume maybe he said some other racist things off panel that we didn't see. I don't know. Then again, he's in a relationship with a cat woman, a werecat, though she is white. The only other strike I could find against him was as he went undercover as a cable repairman to try and get into Bushman's embassy, but he chose to go as a Hispanic. He put on a fake mustache, didn't do any makeup or anything like that, seemed to put on a very thick accent. Every second word out of his mouth was amigo or Holmes. No hay problema, Holmes. Once again, I mean, this particular issue came out in the early 90s and it was a different time. Would you say John Candy is a racist for many of his portrayals in Who is Harry Crumb?
I am the jour de Lioche.
Oh, could you spell that, please?
I don't think so. Try it with a D.
I really wouldn't. John Candy is a Canadian legend. On second thought, it might be racist. As I read more and more Moon Knight comics, I found less and less reasons to find Moon Knight as a racist. So, definitively, I believe I can say Marc Spector, Moon Knight, is not racist. He's actually Jewish, for crying out loud. He may be the first Marvel Jewish superhero, although that is a whole other can of worms. Yes, the Thing and Kitty Pryde predated him, but he might have predated them with his Judaism. That's not what we're talking about. So if Moon Knight the character isn't racist, what was the problem back in Marvel Fanfare number 39? I set my targets onto Michael Carlin, the writer. And that is where some of the interesting stuff happens. Michael Carlin was actually an assistant editor over at Marvel, and he wrote very sparingly, though he did write from time to time. I think it was more a deal of when somebody needed to fill in, they just kind of got people to do it. And Michael Carlin, while his writing was not terrible, it certainly was problematic. And I started with Marvel Team Up number 137 because it's got Aunt May becoming a Herald of Galactus. Marvel Team Up number 137 is just madness upon madness upon madness stacked, and there's madness behind the scenes that brought it all to light. It was Assistant Editors Month, whatever that means. Honestly, it was a whole thing where instead of the editors editing, it was assistant editors editing, and other madness that we'll get into came from this. Basically, everybody behind the scenes was trying new things and having fun. And that included letting Mike Carlin write Marvel Team Up number 137 that had Aunt May and Franklin Richards teaming up with Galactus. I'm not going to get into the whole issue because it's just weird and wild, but the Fantastic Four are at the circus, and so is Peter Parker, and then a whole big thing comes up, and Spider-Man's like, hey, I'll show up and go with you guys, and they all go on their adventure, leaving Aunt May to take care of Franklin Richards, but Galactus shows up, and then he's like, I need a herald. They give him Twinkies, and Aunt May has made a Herald of Galactus named the Golden Oldie. Anyway, the reason I brought this one up is because it's not any racism, but there's ageism in it. Ageism blatantly from the writer and kind of from Aunt May. As soon as Aunt May becomes the Golden Oldie, she is like, holy crap, I feel better. Being old sucks. I'm so glad I'm not old anymore. She literally says, no more arthritis, no more Geritol, and no more bingo. Of course, arthritis is an ailment that afflicts a lot of elderly people. Geritol is a set of vitamins that I guess must have been associated with older people in the 80s. And bingo is a game that all ages can enjoy. I myself think it'd be fun to go play bingo once in a while. I don't, but I think it'd be fun if I did. Anyway, that's enough to dismiss as a little one-off line, like, okay, obviously it feels good to be young. Of all the older people in my life that I know, they've kind of accepted it and they've had years to grow into it. They are fine with being old. Do they wish they could be younger? Absolutely. Does it inhabit their every thought? No, not at all. So anyway, Aunt May flies over because she's got to buy some stuff because she's going to make a giant Twinkie for Galactus. It's weird. And she flies over to these other friends of hers and she flies in and they're like, oh, May, is that you? Oh my gosh, what's happening? And all of them just flock over to her and they're like, what have you done? Can you give it to us? I hate being old so much. Can you do this? Can you make us all young? And so basically, and I know Mike Carlin's just having fun, but first of all, he made Moon Knight racist and now he's just saying old people suck and they don't want to be old. Am I reading too much into it? Absolutely. So what I take away from this issue, aside from Aunt May making a giant Twinkie for Galactus, is that according to Mike Carlin, old people don't want to be old. Being old is a curse, and it's wretched, and it's horrible, and old people are all miserable. Shame on you, Mike Carlin. So the other issue that I mentioned came out of Assistant Editors Month was Daredevil number 202, and it had a backup story written by Michael Carlin again. It's in a school, and this teacher is saying, oh, it's time for your report, and she keeps calling Dirk McGurk, and she's getting madder and madder because he's not showing up, and she's like, well, this kid's gonna fail again. Then he comes through the door, and she's like, well, you're late. Like, the teacher's just being really rude, and he goes and gives a report on Daredevil, which may or may not have some fallacies, I don't know, but throughout the whole thing, you can just see this teacher's oozing disdain for Dirk McGurk. She's like, get on with it, Dirk McGurk. Come on, Dirk McGurk. Finish it up, Dirk McGurk. And he does. He gives his little report. He's obviously he comes in a costume, he's got art, he's very passionate about it, he's doing a really good job. The kid can't be more than second or third grade. I think teachers should nurture that. Right? He's given his report. I think he did a good enough job. He's a little cocky because at the end he says, can I have my A now? And the teacher, instead of saying, no, maybe a B or a C or a D, or even an F if she so feels, she actually stands up and grabs a ruler and says, you want an A for that piece of... You'll be lucky if you walk out of here without a Z. But she is like straight up about to smack him and beat him with a ruler. I understand it was a different time and things like that may or may not have happened. They definitely did happen. But I don't think a comic book is a place to show potential beating of a child. But Mike Carlin does. Anyway, Turk is thrown through a window and right away the teacher also says, get away from that ruffian. She doesn't know why he was thrown through the window or what happened. She just saw a African-American gentleman thrown through a window and assumes he's a ruffian. So not only did this Michael Carlin write about child beaters, he also makes them racist. Ultimately, Daredevil shows up and takes Turk away, and class is dismissed because the window's broken. I did not read every single thing that Michael Carlin wrote, so I'm sure there are some decent ones, but almost everything I did read had some red flags. I went over to check some of his DC work. Secret Origins number 33, he wrote about Mr. Miracle, and yeah, there is child beating in that too. It's about young Oberon, and he joins the circus, and the ringmaster there beat the crap out of him and used him as slave child labor. It could be said he is just depicting how the real world actually was. He doesn't harbor all these thoughts for himself. He did have a short run writing Captain America from issue 3 301 to 306, and that was right after Captain America was turned into an old man by the Red Skull, so I was excited for that. But actually, everybody on the Avengers treated him with support. His girlfriend, Bernie, was still like, I'm still engaged. They were engaged at the time. He didn't run away because he got old. She's like, I love you no matter what. Even Captain America wasn't terribly hard on himself for suddenly being old. I was really surprised. Nomad may have had some animal abuse as he picked up a cat roughly, but it wasn't really much. The weirdest thing in that run of issues was 3 guys sitting on a motorcycle. Anyway, I can definitively say that Moon Knight is not racist, and Mike Carlin is not a bad person. Actually, he might be. I honestly don't know. So do not go saying that I said he's a bad person, because I legitimately don't know the guy. He's currently a creative director at DC Animation, and he was a long-time serving editor at Marvel, and then at DC he oversaw the death and return of Superman. So I mean, the guy is a brilliant editor. He's edited a lot of good things. I just think maybe his writing skills left something to be desired. Even though the writing was fine, it was simply writing in another time. People reading these in the 80s wouldn't have had a single issue with them. I honestly don't really have an issue with them either. I understand it's from a different time, and maybe stuff like that does need to be shown more. I honestly don't know. There's probably a whole discussion to be held here that I'm not mentally prepared for at the moment. But do you know of any other comics and just panels like that in particular that wouldn't be able to be printed today? If you do, let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll do another video like this. And if you could like and subscribe and even share this with people, I would really appreciate that. Anyway, Moon Knight is not racist.